All right, everybody. Well, welcome to our next week of our book club of Captivate, right? We've learned lots of good things in this book so far, just about people and their body language and their tones of voice and all that kind of good stuff. And so it's been fun to read. All right, so right now we're on chapter 4, and we're on chapter 4, and it's called Highlight: How to Be the Most Memorable Person in the Room. All right, Jenny, you want to take it away?
I think this just comes naturally,
Oh,
but
doesn't
we're
it
good.
though?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
we should just skip this chapter.
We know how to do this. All right, here we go. My vow of silence lasted for 7 days. No talking, no writing, no posting on social media, no responding to email. That week was one of the hardest, most introspective, soul wrenching times of my life. I almost lost my mind. The whole adventure started the day my kind, honest friend dropped an advice bomb. She gave me one of the toughest pieces of constructive feedback I've ever received. You are an interrupter. Horrified, I tried to clarify. What do you mean? Do you think I interrupt you when you speak? Gently, she explained, yes. And another truth grenade. I've heard you do it to others too. Boom, shock, embarrassment, and then a little self exploration. I am terrified of awkward silences. I fear that moment when someone finishes a sentence and no one knows what to say next. To prevent those uncomfortable pauses, I got in the habit of interrupting. Worse, I began to pre plan my responses while only half listening to the conversation. This is a terrible way to interact. It's disrespectful, inauthentic, and exhausting for all parties. I realized that if I wanted to learn to be a better listener quickly, I should quit talking cold turkey, enter a vow of silence. On August 10th, 2014, I took a pledge and alerted all of my readers and colleagues that I would not be talking. I wanted to be in silence until the silence became less scary. There was one other hurdle. Even though I couldn't talk, I still wanted to listen. So instead of hiding out in my house reading, I forced myself to attend all of my usual meetings, networking events, and dinners like normal, but just listening. This way, I had to be present. I couldn't think about witty comebacks, funny stories, or follow ups. My number one goal was simply to listen with my entire brain. I didn't even allow myself to write. Then I still would have been dreaming up clever responses instead of listening. My only allowances were 4 pre-made flashcards that I could show to people I encountered. They said, I've taken a vow of silence. I'm trying to become a better listener. 2, please tell me about yourself. 3, I'm sorry. And 4, thank you for allowing my silence. The first day was the hardest. I walked into my first networking event as a sweaty, jittery mess. What if I freaked people out? What would I do in those horrible long pauses of silent disgust? Can you get kicked out of a networking event for not networking? I completely panicked when a gentleman introduced himself, but I shakily held up my first card. I've taken a vow of silence. I'm trying to become a better listener. To my delight and surprise, he laughed and told me how he had once lost his voice to laryngitis in college, and it was one of the coolest and craziest experiences of his life. Then he spoke about meeting his wife a few weeks later. Then he shared his hope for his children. Then he asked for my card. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. He just wanted to be listened to. As humans, we are desperate to be heard. The biggest thing I learned during my vow of silence is that the best conversations aren't about what you say, they're about what you hear. I made better business connections during my silent week than during the fast paced industry conference I went to the week before. One businesswoman even emailed me the day after my vow of silence and said, Hey, Vanessa, I've been thinking so much about our conversation last night. I just joined your body language course and can't wait to start it. I'd love to take you out to coffee in the next few weeks if you're free. This email boggled my mind. I hadn't said a single word, but somehow our conversation was so memorable that it brought me business. Why? Silent science. As much as we hate to admit it, we love to talk about ourselves. In fact, humans spend 30 to 40% of their verbal output solely dedicated to self disclosure. This number balloons to 80% on social media sites like Twitter and Facebook. Harvard neuroscientists Dana Tamir and Jason Mitchell found that something changes in our brain when we talk about ourselves. Activity increases in the brain regions that form the mesolimbic dopamine system. Keyword dopamine. Talking about ourselves gives us pleasure. In one experiment, participants were even willing to forego money to disclose more information about themselves. Yep, people will pay for the privilege to express their opinion. This is the silence behind the famous Dale Carnegie phrase, to be interesting, be interested. And why my vow of silence works so well? When you are interested, when you listen, when you let people talk, they feel pleasure. Before my vow of silence, my mind was always spinning, trying to think of what I was going to say next. I couldn't really process what people were saying because I was too busy trying to think of witty jokes, dazzling stories, and clever responses. This was a terrible way to interact. I was both distracted and turning people off by my distractedness. Then, to my great surprise, my silence won me more friends than my overeagerness ever had. Does this mean we should go around being silent during our interactions? Definitely no. Being interested is only the first piece of the puzzle. Step one, when you ask dopamine worthy conversation sparkers and listen to people's responses, pleasure is produced. Success. But it's what you do next that counts. Step two, how do you honor what they say? What are you listening for? How do you respond to their self disclosure? A great interaction is not one sided. Here's the one thing: being quiet didn't just help me learn how to avoid interrupting, it also taught me a new way of listening. Larry King said, I never learned anything while I was talking. I need a drink.
I thought that was part of the Larry King quote. I was like, I thought that was part of the Larry King quote when you said,
I need a
I never
drink.
learned anything from talking. I need a
need a
drink.
drink.
I was like, I kind of did a double take. I'm like, did he say that?
That's not in my book. Did I get the condensed version? Wait. No, I just need. Okay. All right. Silent Sloan. When Alfred P. Sloan took the reins as vice president of operations at General Motors, the company was struggling. In 1920, General Motors accounted for only 12% share of car sales in the country. Sloan dreamed bigger. He decided the best way to tackle his industry competitors, namely the Ford Motor Car, would be to go directly to his dealers to improve sales. Sloan began to visit each and every dealership personally and listen to the salesman's ideas. Sloan's unique style was unheard of at this time. Borderline heretic, anyway, not a good idea. As reported by the New York Times, I don't know why I couldn't get that word out. It may surprise you to know, he said at the time, that I have personally visited with many of my associates practically every city in the United States, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, from Canada to Mexico. On these trips, I visited from 5 to 10 dealers a day. I met them in their own places of business, talked with them across their own desks, and solicit from them suggestions and criticisms as to their relations with the corporation. When meeting with dealers, Sloan didn't try to win them over or convince them of his ideas. He once said, I prefer to appeal to the intelligence of a man rather than attempt to exercise authority over him. He was nicknamed Silent Sloan because when he listened, it was with the extra intentness of the deaf. Sloan remained at the helm of General Motors until 1956. During his tenure, he spearheaded major advances in automotive technology, including four-wheel brakes, ethyl gasoline, crankcase ventilation, and knee action front springs. By the time he left in 1956, General Motors was one of the most successful companies and had claimed over 52% of market share, a big leap from 12% when Sloan first started. Personal friend of Sloan and leading business author Peter F. Drucker credits Sloan's success not to a fearless vision or to ruthless tactics, but to a listening driven management style. How did Sloan hack the art of listening? Here's how he worked. Sloan spent 6 days a week in meetings, 3 with formal agendas and 3 to address problems as they arose. Other than stating each meeting's initial purpose, Sloan attended each meeting in silence. He almost never took notes or spoke except to clarify something with a question. According to Drucker, he ended each meeting with a brief, pointed summary and thanks. Following each meeting, Sloan would pick one executive to be accountable and composed a short memo with a summary of what was said, next steps, work assignments, and a specific deadline. A copy of the memo was sent to everyone in the meeting. Sloan overturned conventional wisdom on what effective leadership looked like. In 1931, MIT created the first university programs for executives called Sloan Fellows. And then the MIT Sloan School of Management was founded in 1950. For 3 decades, Silent Sloan led with what he heard, not with what he said. He listened with intent and then followed up with action. I call this hack being a highlighter. You bring out the best in yourself by looking for the best in others. Jean Bedley was a National Educator of the Year. Skill 1, be a highlighter. I have a moderate obsession with office supplies. Nothing gets me going like a fresh pack of snazzy pens, a bunch of little notebooks, and a colorful array of sticky tabs. I remember inheriting my first bright yellow highlighter from my older brother, and by inherited, I do mean I stole it from his backpack. It was such a game changer. That little stick of brightness helped me learn faster, remember more, and emphasize important points. The best communicators do the exact same thing. They serve a conversational highlighters. They listen to learn more about a person. They listen to learn more about a person, to remember what was said, and then find the important points to act upon. So far, you've designed your social game plan, leveraged the triple threat, and sparked conversation. Now what? It's time to hack the art and science of listening. You can do this by being a highlighter. Hack number 4, highlighter. Bring out the best in people by highlighting their strengths. When you know what to listen for, you know exactly how to respond. Highlighting is also a way of practicing more refreshing and honest interactions. Highlighting is not about sugarcoating, it's not about brown nosing, and it's not about sucking up. It's about honoring what you truly find noteworthy and getting real conversations started. Emily McDowell has made an entire business out of speaking truth by highlighting people, and it happened by accident. In 2012, Emily had an idea for a different kind of Valentine's Day card. She wanted to help people on Valentine's Day who are dating but not officially in a relationship. So she printed up 100 copies of this card at a local printer and put it up on Etsy in January 2013. She called it the Awkward Dating Card. Talk about a conversation sparker. Her card's raw honesty and humor took the internet by storm. It says, I know we're not like together or anything, but it felt weird to just not say anything. So I got you this card. It's not a big deal. It doesn't really mean anything. There isn't even a heart on it. So basically, it's a card saying hi. 3 months later, she got an order from Urban Outfitters for 96,000 cards. Emily started creating more honest posters, pins, tote bags, and paper products that help highlight anyone who receives them. She has ridiculously candid birthday cards that say, thinking about you is like remembering I have ice cream in the freezer. You can get notepads that are everyday achievement awards, where friends or colleagues can fill in the blanks to highlight a recent task. Is hereby issued to blank for the modest yet mighty task of blank. We honor your victory. I was turned on to Emily's amazing highlighting approach when someone handed me a card that said, I noticed how awesome you are. It made my day. I then got myself a pack of her cards to hand out that say, I love the shit out of you and you don't suck. Emily's cards are powerful because they give both compliments and truth. Anyone can be a Hallmark card, doling out bland flattery and boring cliches. But highlighting is about more than just giving regular praise. Like Emily McDowell's cards, it is about truly expecting the best from people and helping everyone in your life perform, act, and show up as the best, most honest version of themselves. I'm just going to say I would like a pack of cards that say you don't suck.
I would too. Who is it? Emily who? McDowell?
Emily McDowell, yeah.
It's written in your book. Just look at page 54,
Look at the book, Lori.
Lori Morris. Apparently, you did not hit submit on that yet.
Lori needs a pack of cards that says.
This is going to be the running joke. Maybe for your birthday, I'll give you this book.
You think you'll be done with it by February?
I'm sure we'll be done with it by then.
Maybe for
It'll
this
still be funny.
We'll all send you this book, and then you'll have plenty of copies to share.
Well, you know what? Like with this chapter, they're talking about the art of listening. I'm actually listening, and I'm not reading.
I'll see. Yeah, quit trying to spin that into the fact that you forgot to submit on the book order.
So what was her name again, Lori? Since you're listening so well, what?
Emily McDowell. Emily McDowell. Right? Isn't that what it is?
It is. You're right.
I know. Yep. I need some cards that say you don't suck.
You don't suck. That's great. Okay. The Pygmalion effect. There is a famous Greek myth about the sculptor Pygmalion. According to legend, Pygmalion used a large piece of ivory to carve his version of the ideal woman. His statue was so beautiful and realistic that he fell in love with it. Embarrassed and ashamed to admit his desires, Pygmalion made offerings to the love goddess Aphrodite. At her altar, he secretly prayed to meet a woman who would be the living likeness of my ivory girl. When Pygmalion got back to his studio, he planted
Hold
a
a second. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I have something to add. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I looked up. Sorry, this is so funny. I looked up this lady's website, right? And I glanced at one of her cards. So the first one I found said, "Let me." Oh shoot! A pop-up just came. Okay, so it says, "Please let me be the first to punch the next person who tells you everything happens for a reason."
Yes. Yes.
I'm sorry, that's really funny. And it says, and then below it, it says like, "I'm sorry you're going through this." It's all it says, like, because it's a like a everything happens empathy
Yeah.
card. I'm sorry you're going through this.
That's
Oh my
funny.
God. Sorry, that was funny. I had to share with you guys. All right, carry
Well,
on.
she's not listening. She's Googling things, but that's okay.
I know where Lori was going with that. Okay, gotcha.
Okay. So, all right. When Pygmalion got back to his studio, he planted a soft kiss on the statue. To his surprise, he found the ivory lips warm. I feel like I'm reading a one of those weird novels. Yes. When he kissed her again, the statue came to life. Pygmalion then married the woman of his own creation. The Pygmalion myth is about self-fulfilling power of expectation. Pygmalion created a blueprint of what he wanted, and then it came to life. In other words, great expectations are met with greatness. Psychologists have found that this idea is no myth. This phenomenon is called the Pygmalion effect. When voters are told they are more politically active than their peers, even if they were actually chosen at random, they have a 15% higher turnout rate than the control group. When donors are told they are above average givers, even if they are not, they in turn donate more to become above average givers. When hotel maids are told they have a high intensity calorie burning job, they in turn burn more calories. When a computer gives automated compliments to students, those students perform better on task, even when students know those compliments are automated. Humans love to be given positive labels. They improve our self image and gently push us to be better versions of ourselves. So, as you use conversation sparkers and see what unexpected directions they lead you in, allow yourself to be impressed by the person across from you. Listen to their eloquent ideas, find ways to emphasize their strengths, celebrate their excitement. Take the rather silly example of the sorting hat in the Harry Potter series. At the beginning of each school year, Hogwarts students are sorted into different houses by a magical hat that reads their minds, taking full measure of their hidden skills. Each house is known for different strengths, and as they move to the higher grades, students' defining characteristics become more and more pronounced. Students in Slytherin tend to be sly, savvy, and interested in the dark arts, whereas those in Hufflepuff often end up in caretaking magical jobs like herbology and care of magical creatures. For better or worse, the more clear the labels we're given, the more we embody them. It frightens me that I know exactly what they're talking about. I'm like, yeah, that's true. Here are some examples you could use. You know everyone. You must be a great networker. I'm amazed by your dedication to this organization. They're lucky to have you. You're so knowledgeable in this subject. Thank goodness you're here. Another way of highlighting is to celebrate the victories of others as if they were your own. Good feelings multiply around other good feelings and divide when they are not matched. When you see someone who is proud, excited, or passionate, mirror and match it. This associates you with their feelings of pleasure. You can say something simple. I'm so thrilled for you. How wonderful that must be. That's the best news. Congrats. When I see something, anything that's awesome, I always take the opportunity to highlight. I tell my barista his latte art is gorgeous. I gush over my friends' new haircuts. I send out postcards telling people they're ballers. Yes, really. Skill number 2, be a raver. Want to know one of the biggest missed opportunities in social situations? Introductions. I get some version of this email multiple times a week. Hey, Vanessa, I wanted to intro you to Dave. Dave here is that intro you were asking for. Hope you two connect. Boring. I have no idea who he is or why I should know him. The same thing happens at networking events, client meetings, and conferences. I'm almost always introduced to someone in the most boring, generic way possible. Vanessa, meet John. John, meet Vanessa. This is a waste of an opportunity. Seize introductions as the perfect way to highlight people. Even if you have only known them a few minutes, you can find something to rave about. Vanessa, meet Dave. He's killing it in the software industry and just had a hugely successful launch. Joe, meet Sue. She's an incredible painter and one of the most talented artists I know. Kirk, let me introduce you to Annie. We just met and she's telling me the most fascinating story of her trip to South Africa. You can even do this when you're the one introducing yourself. It's so nice to meet you. I've heard that you have an incredible blog. Please tell me all about how you got all of your success. Great to know you. A friend of John is a friend of mine. He always knows the most interesting people. It's a pleasure. Your name tag says you work at Ken's Bakery. They're my favorite pizza in town. Have you always been a pizza aficionado? Why are raving introductions so powerful? First, you give people positive labels right at the start. Second, you tee up a great conversation and possible discussion topic for the people involved. Third, you get people talking about themselves, what they do, who they are, which produces dopamine. Yes, a raving introduction is also a conversational spark. Boom, win, win, win. Skill number 3, don't be a golem. Do you know what the opposite of the Pygmalion effect is? The Gollum effect. The Gollum effect is when low expectations lead to poor performance. Major Wilburn Schrank decided to test the Gollum effect on incoming United States Air Force Academy freshmen. Schrank randomly assigned labels to a group of 100 enlisted airmen at the United States Air Force Academy Preparatory School. They were given one of 5 different makeup ability levels. The US military is all about labels, rank, and position, so Schrank wanted to know if these labels have any effect on academic performance. Sure enough, for all of the data sets, the airmen who received the worst labels also performed the worst. The Gollum effect can have devastating consequences across the board. Dr. Brian McNatt found that the Gollum effect is especially prevalent in the workplace. Think of bosses who pick favorites. Here's what happens. Jeff is the boss. He hires a new sales associate from his alma mater, XYZ University. He takes her under his wing. They grab lunch more often. He gives her the best assignments. After all, Jeff thinks anyone from his alma mater has the best possible education, and he wants his fellow alumni to succeed. She benefits from the Pygmalion effect. Jeff expects the best from her, and she performs at her best. Other employees see the favoritism and feel left out. One particular manager, Ken, who went to ABC University, XYZ's rival, Jeff is constantly ribbing Ken, jokingly, of course. Ken doesn't get invited to watch games at the boss's house on weekends. Jeff teases Ken for not being able to get into XYZ. Ken knows he's kidding, but feels the sting anyway. Hallway chit chat and water cooler conversations matter. Expecting the best is not just important for new people, but also to build up the existing people in your life. What are you saying about and to your colleagues? Being a highlighter is about constantly searching for the good in people. When you tell people they're good, they become better. When you search for what's good, you feel great. Bonus, help people impress you. Have you ever wanted to impress people with your knowledge, your experience, your success? I think highlighting is actually the key to impressing people. My friend Thursday Brahm is an amazing highlighter. She runs a club called Pi Ladies. It's a group of female coders who use the Python programming language. They meet multiple times a week to socialize, brainstorm, and help on coding projects. When Thursday and her fellow founders got the idea for this group, it was important for them to create a thriving, supporting group of women. Thursday got the idea of bringing gold star stickers. You know, the kind teachers gave us when we were little. Everyone, no matter how old, loves getting a gold star. So at meetings and during events, Thursday passes out gold stars to ladies who contribute an idea, help fix a problem, or are just all around awesome. Not surprisingly, people love it. And as more and more Pi ladies receive gold stars, they act in more and more gold star worthy ways. The cycle creates an upward spiral of behavior. You don't actually have to carry around gold star stickers to highlight people, although it would be a fun experiment to try. Instead, highlighting is about giving people emotional gold stars by assigning positive labels, capitalizing on their excitement, and calling out their good deeds. Being memorable is not about bringing up your high points. It's about highlighting theirs. Don't try to impress people. Let them impress you.
Hey, Jenny. So I feel like that's literally what Pam does. Pam does that so well. I mean, like so well. She's very good at highlighting people, and I think that's the one of the many reasons why a lot of people just gravitate to her, because she's good at that on all levels, not just champions. I mean, you see her walking the hallways at Jubilee and things like that, and if you happen to be walking with her and she goes to introduce you to somebody, she just doesn't say, hey, Ellen, this is Jan McDonough. She says, hey, this is Jan McDonough. She is blah, 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 blah. And, oh, you would love her, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, she doesn't just make an introduction. And I think that that's why a lot of people enjoy spending time with Pam. They reach out to her. That's the reason why I did before I even was in Tupperware, because she made me feel good about myself. I didn't know why or how she made me feel good about myself. I just knew when I left her presence, I felt like good about myself. And I think that that's part of what she does. And sometimes it's so subtle that you don't even realize. Like, I had no idea that that's what she was doing. I just knew how I felt when I left her, you know? And so that's something that I feel like is something that can be done. And they were talking about, like, I just kind of keep thinking about virtual type, you know, adaptations and stuff. And I was talking about water cooler chit chat conversations matter. You know, water cooler chit chat conversations, those are our messenger groups. You know, those are random text messages. Those are things like that, you know, in this virtual world. You know, I just wanted to add that. So, anybody else? Okay. Everybody's so quiet this morning. Okay.
Okay. All right, here we go. Hacking listening. I have made my vow of silence an annual tradition. It reminds me to pause, stop interrupting, and listen intently. Now, hundreds of my readers join me on these quiet adventures with the hashtag vow of silence. We quit social media, turn off email, and just practice listening. Every time, I am astounded by how many people yell at me during my vow, as if my not speaking somehow turns off my hearing. Each time, I am shocked when people attempt to use elaborate hand gestures and dramatic dance as they talk to me. Quiet is not deaf. Most importantly, after each vow, I am reminded that while listening is an amazing tool to get people to open up, it's only the first step. Real connection comes with interaction. And then she's got like this little asterisk here, and it says, want to do a vow of silence with me? Join us. When you sign up for the digital bonuses, we will send you a reminder when we have our next one. Register at www.scienceofpeople.com/toolbox. For those of you that don't have the book to be able to see that.
And for those of us who wish to take a vow of silence, which I do not, so I will pass.
Seriously, the guy talking about like that he had laryngitis once and it was such an interesting experience. It's weird. Like, if you cannot communicate after a couple of days of that, you're like, the first day you're extremely frustrated because you have so many things that you want to say. And then when your voice finally comes back, you're kind of like, can we rewind? Because I have something to say with this and I have something to comment on this. And it's just funny because you become so hyper aware of it.
Well, I was thinking about like you, whenever you were doing that thing, and I don't think they've done it because of COVID the last year or two. But
my silent retreat.
Yeah, your silent retreat.
Yeah.
And every time she'd do it, I would think I would go out of my mind.
Well, it's different because you're not interacting with people either. Like, you are in a room by yourself. Like, and so it's very different because it's not like you're seeing all these people and you just can't talk. You can just smile at each other, you know? You just don't. I mean, you might bump into somebody in the hallway going to the bathroom, but it's very rare. Like, I think one time I ran into somebody. But yeah, so it's different because you're by yourself.
Yeah. I'd have to talk to myself. I still couldn't keep quiet.
You can talk to yourself, I guess. I don't know. I didn't talk to myself. The big thing is, it's like, you know, it's no electronics and all that stuff. So you don't have any distractions. I think that makes it more hard because, you know, anybody can sit in silence and listen to their phone, you know, or watch something on their phone or whatever. But to just like, you know, sit there and
do nothing. It's
pray and
by
read.
yourself. Yeah.
I think I'd be sleeping most of the time, you know?
A lot of people sleep. I slept. I didn't really, like, the first day, like, you don't even know what time it is. Like, you have no concept of time other than like the light, and it's night, and it's the winter. So like, who knows, you know? And so there's no concept of time. So a lot of people slept a lot. Like that's resounding what people say. The first year I slept too much. And then the second night after you break the silence and you talk to everybody, I couldn't sleep. So I was up till like 2 a.m, like, or later probably. By then you could have your phones and you could be like, you could do anything. Like, I could plug in, I could do whatever. But yeah, but it's different. It's not as bad as you think.
So as bad as you think. I just like to talk. I don't know what to say. Okay. I once had dinner with a former fashion model. Genevieve is stunning, shining auburn hair, milky skin, and super long legs. During our meal, she was demure, pleasant, and attentive, but rarely spoke. When asked a question, she would smile, answer quickly, and take a sip of wine. I didn't think much of the experience and probably wouldn't have remembered it at all until something interesting happened a few weeks later. I was at a party talking to a few friends when Genevieve sauntered up. I turned and introduced her, trying as best I could to rave. Even though we had spent an evening together, I didn't have much to go on, so I kept it simple. Everyone, meet the lovely Genevieve. We had dinner at that amazing new Italian restaurant on 23rd last month. She shook hands with the group, stayed for a few minutes, and then asked if I wanted to grab another glass of champagne with her. As we walked away, she huffed in exasperation. Ugh, she exclaimed. I have met your friend Chris at least a dozen times. Every time I see him, he doesn't remember me. What's his problem? This didn't surprise me in the least. Here's the hard truth. It wasn't Chris's fault, it was hers. Genevieve doesn't give people a reason to remember her. Being an amazing listener is not just about what you hear, it's how you respond to what you hear. In every conversation, every interaction, every meeting we have, we want to give people a reason to remember us. Genevieve has supermodel looks and a very pleasant demeanor, but that's not enough. I can't help but compare my experience with Genevieve to a daily interaction I have with the parking lot attendant at my gym. George directs the traffic in the insanely small parking lot at my local gym. Despite people grumbling at him all day, he always greets everyone happily and asks them the same question. Want to know the daily fun fact? The first time he asked me this, I was lost in my own thoughts, charging across the lot. It stopped me dead in my tracks. Daily fun fact? I was delighted. Dopamine pumping in promise of a mental reward. Of course, I want to know the daily fun fact. Then he recited his fun fact of the day, which is always something titillating or laugh worthy, like, did you know Scotland's national animal is the unicorn? Or you can see an owl's eyeball when you look in its ear. Or the one from today, Russia has a larger surface area than Pluto. Here's the best part. Did you know where he gets his fun facts? Us. He delivers his fun fact the day he asks each person, do you have a fun fact for me? And he waits and listens as people tell him all kinds of obscure tidbits, some real facts and some just fun facts about all aspects of life. Talk about using hack number 3, conversational sparks. Inevitably, they end up laughing and checking Google for verification on most. Secretly, I hoard fun facts for him and always hope he will pick mine the next day. I used to pull into that lot stressed and miserable, trying to squeeze into a parking space. Now I look for George. Challenges. Introduce a colleague or friend to someone you think they should know. Practice making 2 raving introductions. Number 2, who impresses you? Who is an amazing friend? Who is the best networker you know? Go tell them. Number 3, bonus. Take a 1-day vow of silence to be a better listener. You got this, Lori. Chapter review. We remember people who make us feel good and who make us want to be the best version of ourselves. You can optimize an interaction by expecting optimal outcomes. Elevate people by hacking listening, highlighting, and expecting the best in those around you. Becoming a highlighter helps you be the highlight. Listen with purpose, always search for the good. Be at the high point of every interaction by giving people a reason to remember you. When you expect the worst, that's exactly what you'll get. My biggest takeaway from this chapter is.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something. I'm like,
And you have the book. Aren't you reading along?
Line. A little blank line.
You know what? Going back to the beginning part where she was talking about interrupting, and in all honesty, I do have that tendency to do that, but mine isn't because I'm afraid of awkward silences. I don't, it's not like I can't have a conversation and then have it be done and look around. And, I mean, I live with a 13-year-old, so it's a lot of like awkward, I ask her a question and I get, and then I just like, okay, I'm not afraid of that. I just think it's like, I listen, maybe not as much as well as I should, but I'm usually excited and I want to add something to it, and that's, not that that's good, but that's what I do. But I know that there's a lady that Dwayne used to work with. She's no longer there. And she would just be an overtalker and she wouldn't stop. Like, you know, those people, like if I'm talking and they start to talk and they interrupt, they'll stop, but the overtalkers will continue because they want to get their point across, you know, and it drove everyone crazy because she constantly did it. And it was almost the point of being rude, you know? So I think there's different types of like interrupting or why people interrupt, you know? I mean, I do try to not do that. I try not to jump in, you know, but there's some people that I interact with quite often where they're just too slow. Like they're slow on the thought, they're slow on the, you know, like, okay, you know. So I don't know. That's just what my takeaway was about the interrupting thing. You know, there's different reasons why, I guess.
I totally agree. Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally 100% agree with you on that because I thought to myself, I was like, yeah, I interrupt sometimes, but not because I'm afraid of the silence. I don't mind silence at all. I'm very comfortable in silence, actually. And so, but yeah, I thought that was interesting. And there, so I've had people that I've interacted with on a regular basis that would talk over me for a while. And I don't think I really interact with any of them anymore. But when they would start talking over me, I would actually pause and I would say, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I was talking. Because I'm just like, come on. Like, I was just, because they literally would just like start the conversation over you. And it wasn't even like I was droning on or I was talking too slow. But you're right. It's also the cadence of the person talking because like Eric has an aunt who the cadence of it's very difficult to talk on the phone with her because she takes these weird pauses at weird times and you think she's done, but she's actually not. And she doesn't necessarily talk slow. I mean, he has another aunt that talks very slow, but we don't see her very much anymore. And so, but she was like a really slow talker. But this one doesn't really talk slow, but there's like weird pauses and things at the times. And so it's hard to kind of like jump in. Or if you're with a group of people that all like to talk and it's like double Dutch, you're like, can I? Okay, no. Okay,
Yep, nope.
And then the subject goes on, you're like, crap, I had something to add.
So my thing with people that talk slow, and I know I do this, is finishing their sentences for them because I need them to come on. I'm like, you know, I'm just like, please, just get it out there, okay? It doesn't take 48 ums and 3 sounds of silence for you to say, we went to the park yesterday, you know? It's like,
So this is my husband talks slow, like he thinks about what he's going to say. So this is what he does to me, and it's kind of annoying, but it brings it's very annoying, but it brings it to light. So somebody just start talking or somebody interrupt me and I'll be Dwayne. So you know, yesterday I went to the park and
well, wait a minute. Can you tell me some more about the park? Wait, what?
He stops mid word and then looks at me
And looks at you. Mm-hmm.
like, you did it again, and I'm just like, okay, finished.
Well,
Oh no, I'm finished. No, I'm finished.
Forget it.
No, you weren't finished. You were mid word. That's what he
Now,
does when I interrupt.
I have to admit that in a former life, whenever there was a marriage situation that occurred, if I got interrupted doing something, I would say, I would just stop. And Michael would
Sometimes
go,
I do.
Michael would go, are you going to finish what you were going to say? And I'd say no, because apparently you weren't interested anyway. And he would just be like, I had to tell you something before I forgot. And I said, which means you weren't listening to me. You were thinking about something else completely different. So it's not really important.
And then they're like, go ahead and tell it. Go ahead and say what you're going to say. And it's like, I forgot.
Yeah. I don't remember. Got nothing. But when you were talking about living with a 13-year-old, Lori, so at one point in my life was 12, 13, 14, 16, and 20. Now the 20 was okay because she had outgrown most of it, and the other ones annoyed her as much as they annoyed me. But I would ask a question and either get radio silence or fine, it's good,
or a grunt or something.
The 4 of them would walk into the next room, and you couldn't get them to shut up. And I'm like, what is it about me that I don't deserve even half a conversation but the four of you can talk for the next 3 hours without ever shutting up. Yeah. And if I'd walk into the room,
Yeah.
they'd get quiet.
And so
Yeah,
Ella's like the opposite. Like Ella will like talk and talk. Like she was just like
like
she
a
will talk.
toddler, like a toddler. Like, please stop
We have
talking.
James, and James talks incessantly, but Ella, like, I mean, she just comes in, she just spills her guts about everything that happened at school and all this other stuff. It's very rare that I have to like pull things out of her. Usually, like, every now and again, I can see some things kind of stewing, and I'm like, what's going on there? And then it usually doesn't take long. I mean, just like yesterday, we were driving in the car, and she's just like sitting there, and she had this really funny expression on her face. And I looked at her, she goes, I'm thinking. She was really excited, and she's like, I'm thinking. I can see the smoke coming off your head. Like,
You know how I get in? You know how I get information out of my kid? I feed her. As soon as
there
I
you
feed
go.
her,
That mine
Mhm.
would talk more when I was cooking dinner. Somebody
Mhm.
would come in and jump up on the freezer and sit down because we had a chest freezer.
Yep.
And would sit down and start talking. And I've said this before, when the chest freezer broke, I started using it as a place to put blankets because I knew if I moved the freezer, I was going to lose chat.
Yeah.
Because that's what they did. They
Yep.
would come in and jump up on it, grab like a handful of crackers or something like that and talk. And I knew if that freezer was gone and there was nothing but empty space there, it was over. Nobody was ever going to talk to me again. And that was the
Delaney,
only time.
Delaney does the same thing. She jumps up on the counter and she sits
Yeah.
cross-legged on the counter. You
Used
know,
to
and at
sit on the
first I was
counter.
always
That's so
like,
funny.
oh my God, your socks are dirty and you're sitting on my counter. But you know what? I can wash the counter, you know,
Yeah.
but she does. She'll jump up on the counter right on the, you know, and sit. And that's where she talks. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
know.
you can't screw that up by saying
Mhm.
don't sit on the counter. You just
Right. Right. So the awkward silence doesn't bother me because sometimes it's like talking to myself, really. You know, like I'll say something
I'll
and
say, like, am I talking to myself? Like, are you listening? And they're like, yeah, I got it. You know, and I'm just like,
no, you
I'm
don't.
like, okay,
Yeah,
just making sure because I didn't get a response. Like, I'm
I
like,
know.
So at one point on my team chat, I was getting no response. This has been quite a while ago, but it was like there was nothing. I 2 or 3 days and nothing. I'd get a heart here and there, and you could see people were looking at it because those little heads come up in the bottom. So at one point, I just started the day by going, "I'm really feeling like the rapture occurred, and I'm the only one that didn't go." Everybody was like, "No, we're here. What? Wait." I'm like, "Thank you."
But you know what? Like she was talking later about the complimenting. I don't remember what she called it, but complimenting people. Like I find with my team, the more I highlight who's doing what, the more they do it. You know, like, oh, here's our top 5 sellers so far this week, you know, and then they see themselves. And I think it kind of drives them. But the same with the chat, Jenny. Like, I put out there, oh, we're having a flash sale. Who's excited? And I would see people looking, you know, and I would even ask, like, drop me, your favorite emoji if you're excited. And then someone gave me like a star. So I was like, oh, okay, so and so is excited. I'll make sure that I share it with you. And then the next person said something, and then I probably got like 4 or 5 responses. But yeah, I don't know. Just seeing something, maybe that's just how we think because people do it to us, but you know that they saw it and then you don't respond. It's kind of like, like the equivalent of somebody asking you a question to your face and you just look at them like, right? We talked about that in the book earlier, I think.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of having a whole chat full of teenage 13-year-olds.
Right.
Well, the other thing, like what it also is exceptional here too, is when we're thinking about this, it's difficult on Zoom to not interrupt and do things like that too, because like there's just Zoom makes it awkward, right? And so I feel like there is more interrupting on Zoom because sometimes there's a delay, or you're just not sure, like you can't read the people's. Did you lose your dog?
Well, partly that, but I'm just going to digress for a minute. I went to a high school football game on Friday and I sat on the bleachers. Do you know my lower back has been killing me since Friday?
Dude, you got to get one of those seats.
I know, but just sitting for 2-3 hours, you know,
Oh yes, I cannot sit on bleachers. You
God,
would think
my
with all this
back.
extra padding, it would be easier, but it's
I
not.
know.
It's
Back
awful.
pain sucks. I can't find a comfortable place to sit. So that's why I made that awful face when I was standing up. Sorry.
So yeah, but I think Zoom is difficult too, because it's difficult to not interrupt people on Zoom too, because there is a delay sometimes, and it's just a little bit more awkward even than it being in person, because you can't tell from somebody's body language necessarily if they're wanting to contribute, whereas like when you're standing face to face, you can tell that that person has something that they want to share. So respectfully, you can pause so they get a chance to share. But on Zoom, the only indicator is maybe if somebody comes off mute. That means they might have something to say by coming off mute, and like that's kind of about it. Or maybe leaning forward a little bit, like, or raising their hand. Lori raises her hand on her director calls sometimes, and that's effective. But it's just awkward on Zoom and interrupting and such.
Guys, I gotta go. So
Yes.
I'm gonna make you the host, Ellen, because wait, I just want to lead meeting. I don't want to end it for all because
Correct.
that'll work. Yes.
Yeah, we're probably not gonna stay on much longer. So
Okay.
all
right.
good.
So
I and she's done.
I didn't even get a chance to say see ya. Okay.
Well, you didn't want to interrupt her.
Right. I was listening.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, so I just kind of, yeah, I think Zoom and being virtual and stuff kind of messes with some of this type of stuff, but some of it's still applicable, So
I think it's still applicable. It's just that we have to think a little bit differently on how to actually apply it virtually.
Right. Which is what we have to do anyways. I was listening to this training over the weekend. I can't figure out how to share it because it's something I paid for, and a lot of times you can't share, like it's not easy to share those things. But they were talking about like changing things up, right? And so like you want to go further, faster, and to change things up, and maybe like thinking outside the box, like what's the next big thing we could do? What's the next, whatever. And that's kind of what this reminded me of, in the sense of like having to always, over the last year and a half, having to like, we get an idea or we have an old idea, like something we used to do. And we're like, now how do we do that virtually? Like how do we have that similar effect virtually? And I feel like we've been doing a lot of that sort of problem solving over the last year, trying to figure out how to translate things. But yeah. All right. Well, if anybody have anything else they want to add? Not so much. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we will be on next week. The next week is how to be ridiculously likable.
Oh, I'm gonna have to make sure I get on that day.
Exactly, because you would want to be ridiculous.
Maybe even have the book by then.
Maybe. Maybe.
She can keep us guessing.
Well, yeah, you're just gonna have to tune in next Monday and see.
Exactly. All right. Well, thanks everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have a good one.